At exactly 9:15 p.m. on the night of March 6, 1898, in a quiet village on the outskirts of Dorset, England, a woman named Clara Bennett stopped mid-step in her dimly lit hallway, her hand frozen against the wooden wall as a voice, clear, familiar, and impossibly close, called her name from just beyond the front door. It was not loud, not frantic, not the kind of voice that demanded attention. It was calm, patient, certain. Clara. For a moment, she did not breathe. The oil lamp beside her flickered slightly, casting long shadows across the narrow corridor, and the silence that followed felt heavier than the sound itself. She did not move toward the door. She did not speak. And most importantly, she did not open it. By the next morning, nothing had changed on the outside. The village carried on as it always did, with early footsteps on gravel paths, quiet greetings exchanged between neighbors, and the distant sound of carts moving slowly across damp roads. But inside Clara Bennett's home, something had shifted, something that would repeat itself again and again and again until it became the only thing people would remember about her. Clara was 32 years old in 1898, known in the village as a reserved but polite woman who had lived alone for nearly 6 years. She had once been engaged, though few spoke openly about it, and even fewer knew the details. What people did know was that after the winter of 1892, Clara had changed. She withdrew from gatherings, stopped visiting neighbors, and began keeping her door locked even during daylight hours. At first, it was dismissed as grief, or perhaps disappointment. But as time passed, her behavior no longer felt temporary. It felt permanent. On the evening of March 7th, at exactly 9:15 p.m., the voice returned. "Clara?" She was sitting by the window this time, her hands resting quietly in her lap, her eyes fixed on nothing in particular. The moment the voice reached her, she stiffened, her breath catching in her throat as her gaze shifted slowly toward the door. The sound was identical to the night before, same tone, same distance, same calm certainty. It did not knock, it did not rush. It simply called her name, as though it knew she was there. She stood, one step, then stopped. "No," she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible. The voice did not repeat, but it did not need to. Clara backed away slowly, her hands trembling now, her composure cracking just enough to reveal something deeper beneath the surface. Fear, yes, but not the kind that comes from the unknown. This was different. This was recognition. The next day she mentioned it. Not openly, not with urgency, but in a quiet conversation with Mrs. Alden, the woman who lived 2 houses down. "Have you heard anything unusual at night?" Clara asked, her tone careful, almost hesitant. Mrs. Alden frowned slightly. "Unusual how?" Clara paused, her eyes lowering. "A voice, perhaps," the older woman shook her head slowly. "No, dear, nothing like that." Clara nodded. "Of course," she said softly. "I must have imagined it." But she hadn't. On March 8th, at 9:15 p.m., the voice came again. "Clara?" And again she did not open the door. Days turned into weeks, and the pattern never changed. Every night at the exact same time, the voice would call her name. It never knocked. It never grew louder. It never changed its tone. It simply waited just beyond the door, as though it knew she was listening. And Clara never answered. People began to notice. At first, it was small things. The way she would rush inside before dusk, the way she avoided conversation after evening hours, the way her curtains remained tightly closed, even when the weather was warm and the air inside grew heavy. Then came the night when someone else was present. On April 2nd, 1898, a young man named Henry Clark had stopped by Clara's house shortly after 9 p.m. to deliver a parcel sent from a nearby town. He knocked once, then waited. Clara opened the door only slightly, her face pale but composed. "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly. Henry looked confused. "I was told to deliver this tonight." Clara hesitated, then reached for the parcel. "Thank you," she said quickly. "Please go." Henry glanced past her into the dim hallway. "Is everything all right?" he asked. Clara did not answer. Instead, she closed the door. At exactly 9:15 p.m., as Henry stepped away from the house, he heard nothing. No voice, no sound, only silence. That was when people began to question her. "It's not possible," one man said. "If there was someone there, others would hear it." "She's been alone too long," another suggested. "It does things to the mind." But Clara never argued. She never insisted. She never tried to prove anything. She simply continued living as she always had, quietly, carefully, and with a growing distance between herself and the world outside. The truth, however, had not begun in 1898. It had started 6 years earlier. In December of 1892, Clara Bennett had been engaged to a man named Samuel Reed, a carpenter known for his steady hands and easy nature. Their marriage had been expected, welcomed even, by those who knew them. But just weeks before the ceremony, Samuel disappeared. No explanation, no letter, no trace. Clara had waited, at first with hope, then with confusion, and finally with something else. On the night he disappeared, neighbors reported hearing a brief argument outside Clara's house at approximately 9:10 p.m. The voices were low, unclear, but tense enough to be noticed. By morning, Samuel was gone, and Clara never spoke of it again. Back in 1898, as the nightly voice continued, the connection slowly began to form. Not in Clara's words, but in her silence. Because the voice that called her name every night at 9:15 sounded exactly like his. One evening, after nearly 3 months of repetition, Clara stood closer to the door than ever before. The voice came, as it always did. Clara, her hand lifted slowly, just inches from the handle. Her breathing shallow, her eyes wide. For a moment, just a moment, it seemed as though she might open it. Then she stepped back. "No," she whispered. Tears filled her eyes but did not fall. "I cannot." The voice did not return that night. After that evening, everything changed. The voice never came again. Not the next night, not the next week, not ever. Clara resumed her life, but something in her had shifted once more. Not fear this time, but acceptance. She lived alone until her death in 1919, never marrying, never explaining, and never once speaking about the voice again. No evidence was ever found. No second witness ever confirmed what she heard. And yet, those who knew her remembered one thing above all else. She never opened that door, not once. And now, I want to ask you something. If you heard a voice calling your name every night in a voice you recognized, would you have opened the door? Or would you have done exactly what Clara did and left it closed forever? Tell me your answer in the comments. And if stories like this make you question what lies just beyond what we can see, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay for the next story.